Harrison came back to make the catch for it.
Anderson has missed a field goal for the first time in 2 years.
Can't do nothing but get your roll on.
But now he Williams! Touchdown! That is a disgusting act.
Great cash, homie.
26-yard intercepted. I can't believe he missed it. The season can't end like that. It's a Minneapolis miracle. 71-yard touchdown. Bucky Justin Jefferson.
What's up, yo? What's going on? How you doing? My name is Dre, and this is the Painted Line Skull Edition. As I am new to the sports coverage game, I'll give you a quick introduction of who I am and why I'm still a Vikings fan after many years of heartbreak. So I was born in Minnesota. I grew up with Purple Fridays, where we got points in elementary school for wearing purple on Fridays. I've lived through many heartbreaks.
Damn! 99 NFC Championship game? Yeah. Damn!
And some good times as well. Now, who's my favorite player? It may be cliche, but my favorite player of the entire Vikings history is Randy Moss. Growing up, watching him destroy defenses was a lot of fun, and still to this day, there has never been another player, albeit receiver, like him. Even when he was playing for the Patriots, I still enjoyed him. Now, he could get all the stats he wanted, but I wanted the team to lose, though it is fairly unfortunate that he never got a ring. Anyway, so that's who I am in a nutshell. Now, let's get talking about the Vikings and the first game of the 2021 season. Now, this week, the Vikings are headed to
Cincinnati, the best town in Ohio, USA.
And I got 5 keys for the Vikings to pull out a win. Number 1, the defense to stop the Joe Burrow comeback. Now, despite a very promising start to his career, his rookie season ended halfway through after he sustained a severe knee injury during a game. Now, knee injuries in this game are no joke. And as a man who loves to see players make comeback after injuries like that, Vikings need to hold this down for one more game. Prior to the injury, Burrow was one of the top favorites for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now that they lost the corpse of AJ Green in the offseason, they drafted Burrow's old LSU teammate and All-American Jamar Chase to replace him. Jamar had 84 receptions for a little under 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns the last time that they played together. Now, this was also second in receptions to the should-be Offensive Rookie of the Year Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson, who got 111 balls thrown his way for a little over 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns. Either way, though, the duo of Chase and Burrow can be very dangerous. They also re-signed Mike Thomas and signed Trent Taylor from the 49ers. Now, they also have Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Trenton Irwin, Stanley Morgan Jr., Auden Tate, and Scotty Washington. Reason that this is important is that this is almost identical to what they had last year, and Burrow still produced. Now, the Vikings defense is coming off the worst year since 2017.
Yeah, this is a bad defense. Worst one I've ever had.
And our defensive line was the most injured last year, and we didn't get a single snap from edge rusher Danielle Hunter or defensive tackle Michael Pierce. Now, this year, not only are both players back, but we also added Dalvin Tomlinson and Sheldon Richardson. Now, adding a little bit of Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, and it's possible to have one of the league's top front 7. Now, there is a slight question of if Barr is actually going to play, but on August 30th, Zimmer did say he was doing well, and they had a plan for him to go, so we'll see. And he also was on the unofficial depth chart earlier this week. Now, with the DBs and safeties, it's a little worrisome. Now, hopefully Cameron Dantzler will be able to improve in his second year, and then they've also added vets Patrick Peterson, Bashard Breeland, and Mackenzie Alexander to give themselves some more options. Now, honestly, I'm excited about P Square than anyone else, and they've also added Xavier Woods to play alongside the hitman Harrison Smith, who just got paid. And not gonna lie, this is extremely exciting because he is arguably the best safety, if not one of the best safeties in the entire NFL. And including the year remaining on his prior contract, this is essentially a 5-year deal worth approximately $75 million. And if he plays out that entirety of that contract, he'll be in Minnesota through his age 36 season, which would arguably be a good time for him to retire.
Really proud to be a part of it for as long as I have and into the future.
He is now the longest tenured player and has been really one of the most consistent consistent and reliable players. Now, ref is trying to make him this evil and dirty player, but he's just frankly a tough one. In the last 9 years, no safety has had more interceptions than him at 28. He has had 66 career passes defended, 13.5 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, and 747 career tackles, and he made 5 straight Pro Bowl from 2015 to 2019 and was graded as one of the best safeties in the league in 2017 as the best, and in 2019 third. And since 2017, he has had PFF's highest graded safety in the NFL. Now, with this new contract, it's most likely he'll remain a Viking until he retires, which is a rarity for professional players in almost all sports nowadays to remain with the same team for their entire career. Now, he is truly an amazing all-around safety who has been one of the key pieces to the many successful defenses around Zimmer. Now, even with this, Zimmer is known as the DB guru, but there's a lot to be anxious about given how this area has lost its luster over the past few years. Minnesota finished 29th overall with 29.7 points allowed per game and ranked 27th with 393.3 yards allowed per game. Now, on paper, this roster may not be the most talented group out there, but Coach Zim is reportedly one of the smartest defensive minds in the NFL. So let's keep fighting. We'll see what happens. Now, number 2, pressure Burrow and get sacks. Now, going into the offseason, one of the biggest stories for the Bengals was how they were going to rebuild their offensive line. Now, they kept left tackle Jonah Williams, who had the 12th best pass blocking grade, and they also added former Viking Riley Reef. They drafted Jackson Carman, who was a solid college player. However, the one spot that they're still working on is their left guard spot. Luckily, that's the side that Danielle Hunter plays on, and he should be back with a vengeance this year after missing last season with a herniated disc. Now, last season, the Vikings finished with just 23 sacks, which is the lowest total in franchise history since 1982, when sacks became the first official stat. And the player that had the most sacks was Yannick Ngakoue, who wasn't even on the roster after week 6. So this has to be increased this year. Now, getting Danielle back really brings a lot to the defensive line, and because he posted back-to-back seasons with 14.5 sacks in both 2018 and 2019, and if he can simply do that, we'll be better in the long run, and he'll get paid, which he deserves. Additionally, the Vikings brought back edge rusher Everson Griffin after he led the team a few years ago. Now, he got to show that he can still play in the last preseason game against the Chiefs. He had played 4 snaps, had 2 pressures, and 1 sack. He also set DJ Wanham up to get a sack, and it's been said that he's more likely than not going to be playing opposite of Danielle, but as a third option, since he's a little older, it'll make sense that they don't use him on every defensive play, but it's a good indication that he can still sack the quarterback if necessary. I've always liked him, and if he can still play, that's fantastic. Now, I only want to know what his relationship with Kirk after tweeting out that he is. Now, speaking of Kirk, number 3, protect Captain Kirk. Now, because he's not vaccinated, Kirk is going to need all the protection he can get. The offensive line has had many problems, mainly with pass protection, which has been a big problem for the Vikings for many years, going back to 2011, 2012, when they drafted Matt Khalil, who's now no longer with the team. 2 years ago, they drafted Garrett Bradbury, and this year they drafted Christian Darrisaw to replace Riley Reef. Now, Bradbury started every game since his rookie year, and he was at the top of all offensive linemen when it comes to run protection, but he has struggled with pass protection. Now, Darrisaw has been struggling with a groin injury in the preseason, and it limited him through training camp. Now, even when he did play, he didn't play with the first team, and more so with the second team reps at left tackle. The veteran Rashad Hill has been mostly with the first team offensive line, and we re-signed him this year because he has done somewhat well as a pass protector, but Darrisaw is coming off the highest grade, 95.6 of any tackle in the nation last season, and the second highest since 2014 in both pass blocking and run blocking. And if he plays, he could bring a huge improvement to the run and pass protection game. However, that groin injury may prevent him from doing so. So we also drafted Wyatt Davis, who was lauded for his strength, size, and power, and was going to replace Ezra Cleveland, who, like Bradbury, does well with run protection but has struggled with pass protection. However, at this point, point, Davis has only taken second team reps at right guard while also training to be a backup center. Now, they've also worked in Dakota Dozier and Ali Udo, but at the end of the year, PFF ranked the Vikings 26th overall and 27th going into this year. And that's because the offensive line is essentially dependent on Davis and Darisaw, who haven't been getting much action. And then one second-year player, it's definitely worth having some concern. And then we're getting a new offensive coordinator, so there's a lot going on here. But Cincinnati's defense being in the top 10 of points scored against them, it may not be a big of a deal this game. Now, last year, they only sacked the opposing quarterback 17 times, which is less than the Vikings did. However, they also did add DJ Redder back in 2019, who had a career high 85.4 PFF grade, but was injured a lot last year. They also added Trey Hickerson, who pressured the quarterback 49 times last year with the Saints, which is 20 more than he had ever recorded previously. So while the Bengals defense is almost as questionable as the Vikings offensive line, there's more potential upside to that defense, which could be really bad for Kirk if he can't get the ball off in time. So number 4, fire up the stove for Mr. Dalvin Cook, because once you get him going, he's going to be cooking up a meal. Last year, the Bengals were 31st in the NFL at allowing 5.1 yards per carry, but now in the offseason, Bengals gave $100 million contracts to defensive ends Sam Hubbard and Hendrickson. And they also drafted 4 defensive linemen, including Sample and defensive end Joseph Osai. Now, they also picked up a few undrafted free agents such as Darius Hodge, and then converted him to an edge rusher, and he had 1.5 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, and a tackle for the loss in their first preseason game. Now, one can hope that their chemistry isn't there yet, but either way, Dalvin should be getting the ball a lot, and it makes sense because they've been a run-first offense since the days of Adrian Peterson. Now, last year, the Vikings were 4th in yards per attempt of 4.9 and 5th in overall rushing yards of 2,283. Now, Cook himself was a big part of this, as he had 5 yards per attempt and 1,557 rushing yards in only 14 games. Now, this offseason, he no longer has to worry about making a deal and could concentrate only on football. Hopefully, he can be cooking and run circles around the Bengals and explode for 200 plus yards with 3 touchdowns. Hopefully, let's go. Come on, let's get the ball to Cook and let's have him cook up the Bengals.
Exotic meats, hippo steaks, giraffe burgers.
Now, number 5, spread the ball around to the receiving corps. So, Bengals safety J.C. Bates III had a breakout season last year where he was named 2nd all-team pro, and he had a PFF grade of 90.1 and was the number 1 safety in the league last year. Now, he had 100 or more total tackles in each of the last seasons, never ranking lower than 3rd on the Bengals in that category. He also has picked off the most passes for the Bengals over the last 3 seasons with 9 total, along with 31 other pass breakups. So on the Viking side of the ball, last year Captain Kirk completed 67.6 of his passes for 4,265 yards and 35 touchdowns with a QB rating of a 105. Now, this was his 2nd highest rating ever to his 2019 season of 107.4. Though arguably last year's came with a 7-9 record versus a 10-6 record, and honestly could be attested to a lot of garbage time completions. Either way, though, statistically speaking, he's in the top half of the league's quarterbacks. And with one of the best duos in the league, he should be able to produce more. Last year, Thielen caught the ball 70 times for 925 yards with 14 touchdowns, and should have been Offensive Rookie Player of the Year Jefferson caught the ball 88 times for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, the tight end Irv Smith Jr. is coming in as starter after the Vikings let Kyle Rudolph go in the offseason.
Unfortunately, Irv Smith Jr. is out 4 to 8 months after getting the surgery on his knee meniscus. So Tyler Conklin is going to step in. And he's fine, honestly, but the position is slacking a little because Conklin is in his 4th year at the age of 26. He's 6'3" with a weight of 254, and he was a 2018 5th round pick out of Central Michigan. Now in 2020, he got 19 catches for 194 yards on 449 snaps, which was 3rd behind Rudolph and Smith. Now, he's also coming off a small hamstring injury that he suffered in training camp. Now, it's obviously that the Vikings don't 100% trust in him, because when they also traded for former Jets tight end Chris Herndon, who did look good as a rookie in 2018 when he caught 39 passes for 502 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he's somewhat struggled since and was placed on IR 2019 after cracking rib. Now in 2020 he had 31 catches for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now because he's probably going to be behind Conklin just because of learning the new scheme and everything, and because there's no guaranteed third option right now for a wide receiver, even though there's been promise, those two could fill that void. Now they also claimed Ben Ellefson, who will also work in as tight end. Now there's been a few other receivers that have done okay in preseason: KJ Osborne, D.D. Westbrook, and Emir Smith-Marset. And I think that if Cousins can give them at least Thielen and Jefferson and then the tight end opportunities, the offense has a lot of upside and they can sprinkle in the other receivers until one really does stand out.
Now, the final score prediction.
So I ran a Madden simulation with as accurate rosters and accurate weather and everything on an Xbox Series X, and the final score was given to be 27-24. I don't honestly think that the Bengals are going to score that high. I do think that the Vikings have the potential to, so arguably I would just switch the numbers around and reduce it, so to a final score of Vikings 24 to the Bengals 17.
I got 3 words for you. You like that?
Now let us know in the comment section below what your final score prediction is for this game, and you can subscribe to the Painted Lines at Painted Line on Twitter and on YouTube, or at the Skull Edition on Twitter as well. And you can also hit us up and let us know what you think for more Vikings content. We'll see you next week for the Week 1 follow-up and also the Week 2 predictions. Skull, let's go Vikings.